Hello, this is Dr. Bryson, and this is a video for the Seminar in Criminal Justice course. This semester, we're focusing on bridging you from your educational program to beginning your career in criminal justice. We hope by the end of this semester, you will have at least two viable job prospects for which you have applied. However, there are some other issues that we think are important for you to um, see and consider as you go to find a job within the criminal justice system. It is important to understand that every officer is a leader. Every police officer, every corrections officer, everyone is a leader. You can be a leader. My grandfather had an eighth grade education. Because of the Depression, he dropped out of school and began working to help the family. Um, Eventually, just as the Depression is starting to wind down in the late 30s, he is able to get a job with Appalachian Power. He retired in the late 1970s, so he worked for over 40 years. Anytime there was a crisis, folks would look to him for leadership through that crisis. People would ask him, "Are you the foreman?" I loved his answer. He always said, "No, I work for a living." But I tell this story about my grandfather because he was a leader without being in a position of management. So it's important to understand that a manager and a leader are different. But in this video, I just wanted to talk a little bit about what is leadership? How do we define leadership? Because that's not so clear with a lot of folks. So let's look at this. Okay, is it the ability to influence others? Okay, we probably would agree with that, right? Good leaders are able to influence other people. Is it the ability to get things done? We probably would say, yes, that makes a good leader. What about a natural charisma that people want to follow? We'd say that person is probably a born leader. All of these things we would say are good leadership. What are some other things that you would use to define leadership? I want you to think about that for a minute. Why don't you pause the video and write some of those things down for yourself? All right, hopefully you did pause the video and you wrote some things down. But I want you to look at this list of things and your list and tell me, if we consider that previous slide, especially, but also the things that you included in your list, which of the following individuals are great leaders? Now, I want you to look at the images here. There are so many other images I could have put on this screen. Trotsky, Stalin, um, people from the ancient world. Could have put a lot of folks on here. But there are folks here that everyone has claimed as a great leader, or every one of them rather have had some people claim they are a great leader, and some claim that they were the devil incarnate. So you can see Abraham Lincoln there. Abraham Lincoln, everybody says Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves. Well, technically, he was the driving force between the 13th Amendment. And I think it's important to understand the Emancipation Proclamation only freed slaves in states or parts of states that were in rebellion, and it did not free slaves in the states that were not in rebellion or the parts of states that were not in rebellion. But folks in the South talk about how evil Abraham Lincoln was, just how evil he was. There are folks in the North that think he was evil for some reasons as well. He suspended the writ of habeas corpus, which was legal under the Constitution in times of national trouble. So we've got Ronald Reagan up there, right? Ronald Reagan. Well, Ronald Reagan, many people say, was responsible for the fall of the Iron Curtain. There was a movie that was a biopic of Ronald Reagan that came out in 2024. And the whole idea behind that is that he crusaded to make the Iron Curtain fall. There are folks that loved Ronald Reagan, and there are folks that hated Ronald Reagan. Well, then we get to Adolf Hitler. There were a lot of Germans that loved Adolf Hitler because he got Germany out of their depression. Oh, we got Teddy Roosevelt. Back and forth on Teddy Roosevelt as well. Then we've got FDR. Okay, the wealthy folks thought that FDR was a traitor. FDR came from the Roosevelt family, very, very wealthy folks. And they were old money, and old money felt that the New Deal was being a traitor to them. Now, keep in mind, this old money were the robber barons. Then we've got Osama bin Laden and Saddam Hussein, Mussolini, who was Hitler's ally. Many people thought in the very beginning that Mussolini controlled Hitler. We know that was wrong now. And then we have, of course, Winston Churchill, very famous portrait of Winston Churchill. Now, even in his own country, Winston Churchill was hated and loved. Many people don't know this, but as World War II is winding down, there is an election, and Winston Churchill loses the prime minister seat. He loses it. Now, he runs again the next time, and he wins it back for a brief period of time. And then he presides over the destruction of the British Empire, losing all of these nations that Great Britain had accumulated for the previous 300 or so years, such as India. He oversaw the loss of all of those holdings for the British Empire. But even during the war, Neville Chamberlain thought that he was a warmonger, as many other people did. So it's important to understand that all of these individuals were considered good leaders by some and considered bad leaders by the others. Now, I think that there's a way for us to determine whether they are good or bad. If rather than talking about good leadership, we talk about effective ethical leadership. We could also call it effective moral leadership. So Abraham Lincoln would likely fall into that category, right? Adolf Hitler would likely fall into the unethical, effective leadership. He was very effective in his leadership style, but it was very unethical. Okay, the genocide. Okay, unethical being a rather mild term for what he really did, but still, I'm hoping you understand the point here. But then there are folks that are in the gray area. Winston Churchill was a great leader, but he wasn't perfect. There are times when he was going to do great leadership things, and then people bucked him and they turned out being really bad. The Gallipoli campaign in World War I was a disaster. That was in part because some of the things that Churchill said they should do were ignored. So the element of surprise was taken away. Had the element of surprise continued, maybe it wouldn't have been the disaster that it was. Franklin Roosevelt regulated the banks, but then there were other things that he did that might be considered a violation of the Constitution. Ronald Reagan, folks remember a quote golden age where the Berlin Wall fell and the entire Iron Curtain fell. The Soviet Union fell apart because of this crusading president. But a lot of folks don't realize that he also did away with the regulations that FDR got that protected the U.S. from having another depression. Folks don't realize those regulations are gone, and it is possible to have another depression again in the same way that the first one happened. I'm not saying that we could never ever have one with the regulations, but we were protected at least without something even more drastic. So you can see all of these folks here who were known for their leadership. Some were ethical, some were not. So then what are some other questions to ask when we're assessing leaders? So think about these questions. Are they effective at getting individuals to act in a particular way? Okay, if you're going to be effective, you have to influence people. You will have to be influenced by you if you're going to be an effective leader. Now, you may not be ethical. You might be unethical, you might be ethical, but you've got to be effective in getting people to act. Okay, do people follow out of fear or respect? So you might be an effective leader regardless of why they are following you. But an ethical leader, they follow out of respect. Do they create a team environment? In other words, is this about the team? Is this about accomplishing greater goals? Or is this about them and making them look good? Do they protect their followers? There have been times where I have seen leaders not protect their followers. I'll give you an example. Someone that I consulted with on because they got an email. They work in a psychiatric hospital, and they were covering their own caseload and the caseload of two other therapists one week. And they got all of the work done except for one therapy session. For 3 caseloads, they got all of the work done except for one therapy session for one of their own clients who was so psychotic, they did not even know they were in a therapy session anyway. Now, keep in mind, they worked their tail off because they were covering 3 caseloads and not one. Their supervisor was told, hey, there was a billable service missed. Rather than that supervisor simply saying, okay, I'll make sure that they know we've got to make sure we get all of our billable services done. No, the supervisor emailed that person, who, by the way, is known for their time management, emailed that person and said, hey, I noticed you missed one of your sessions last week. Here are some resources to help you with better time management. That leader did not protect their followers. Good leader would have simply said to their own bosses, don't worry, I'll take care of it, and took it on the chin for that person under them, knowing that that person worked their tail off and it wasn't their fault, that they shouldn't have been in trouble in the first place. That's what good leadership does. Poor leadership says, okay, I'll let them know, and then let them know. Do they nurture their followers' growth? Do they want their followers to grow? And one effective leadership strategy is to help your followers grow to the point that they don't need you or their job, but they realize what a good thing they have, and they're not going to leave it. They can leave, but they're not going to. That's when you know you are an effective, ethical leader. But here's another question. Do they micromanage? Do they look at tiny details and want to focus on tiny details? That's such an important thing to look at. Now, this isn't, okay, keep in mind, we have a leadership class here, and I get that. Part of what we want to do in this class is have you review all of your former classes. So please understand that. We want you to review all of your former classes. This is about making sure you leave here well informed and well prepared to enter the criminal justice field. So, I want to thank you all for um, listening and watching this video. I'm going to stop the screen share now if I can get my mouse working. All righty, so I'm stopping the screen share. Just want to make sure you understand how much I appreciate you. Um, and I'm looking forward to seeing the great things you all do once you graduate. Some of you are graduating in May. Some of you may not be graduating until the end of the summer, and we don't have a ceremony then, but you can still, finish your degree and get your diploma and all that. And then some of you are graduating in December at the end of the fall semester. But really appreciate you all. For those of you who are having me for the last time, um, especially, I want to tell you it's been a great journey with you all. I'm glad to be having you this last semester and look forward to seeing the great things that you all do when you get out there and are working. And I know you're all going to become leaders in the criminal justice system. You're going to be good ones. We'll see you next video.